This is Tom Doody, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Doody in a Google search from my site. NYC Subterranean, 72nd Street, Uptown Deck, 1, 2, 3 trains, Manhattan's Upper West Side. This is a great location for a Google Hangout. Fortunately, the visual from the height of the computer, the webcam, captures central this trash can. But standing next to my computer, you get this nice view of converging pillars. Combined with the nice activity of trains on both sides, combined with decent janitorial in the station, relatively current renovation in the oldest subway line in the city. Again, the 123 Manhattan's Upper West Side, 72nd Street. Gay marriage was approved by the Supreme Court yesterday, and the dissenting opinions of the 4 justices went viral. ThinkProgress is one of the versions that caught my attention, to the credit of my Facebook friend Pan Ravi, who is an attorney. And I will read the ThinkProgress selected excerpts of the dissenting opinions of the 4 justices. Roberts. No court should ever care about this issue. Whether same-sex marriage is a good idea should be of no concern to us. Under the Constitution, judges have powers to say what is law, not what it should be. The judges who ratified the Constitution authorized courts to exercise neither force nor will, but merely judgment. The debate on same-sex marriage has been shut down. Supporters of same-sex marriage have achieved considerable success persuading their fellow citizens through the democratic process to adopt their view. That ends today. 5 lawyers have closed the debate and enacted their own version of marriage as the matter of constitutional law. Stealing the issue from the people will, for many, cast a cloud over same-sex marriage, making the dramatic social change that much more difficult to accept. Indeed, however heartened the proponents of same-sex marriage might be on this day, it is worth acknowledging that what they have lost has been lost forever. The opportunity to win the true acceptance that comes with persuading their fellow citizens of just in their cause. And they lose this just when the winds of change were freshening at their backs. Roberts. The decision invents a new concept of justice. The majority's decision is an act of will, not legal judgment. The right, it announces, has no basis in the Constitution or the court's precedents. The majority expressly disclaims justice, caution, and omits even a pretense of humility, openly relying on its desire to remake society according to its own new insight into the nature of injustice. Roberts. As a result, the court invades the marriage laws of more than half the states and orders a transform of a social institution that has formed the basis of social for a millennia. For the Kalahari Bushmen and the Han Chinese, the Carthaginians, and the Aztecs. Just who do we think we are? Roberts. Marriage is only about children and couples who can biologically have them. Voting on that basis, they are not. And to allow the policy question of same-sex marriage to be considered and resolved by select patrician, highly unrepresentative panel of 9 is to violate the principle of even more fundamental than taxation without representation. No social transformation without representation. The majority think they are smarter than everyone else. They have discovered in the 14th Amendment a fundamental right overlooked by every person alive at the time of ratification and almost everyone else in the time since. They see what lesser legal minds like Thomas Cooley, John Marshall, Harlan, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., Learned Hand, Louis Brandeis, William Howard Taft, Benjamin Cardozo, Hugh Black, Felix Frankfurter, Robert Jackson, and Henry Friendly. Could not. Scalia. These justices know that limiting marriage to one man and one woman is contrary to reason. They know that an institution as old as government itself and accepted by every nation until 15 years ago, 21, cannot possibly be supported by anything other than ignorance or bigotry. And they are willing to say that any citizen who does not agree with that, who adheres to what was until 15 years ago, the unanimous judgment of all generations and all societies, stands against the Constitution. Scalia. The opinion is couched in a style that is pretentious, and its content is egotistic. It is one thing for separate, concurring, or dissenting opinions to contain extravagances, even silly extravagance, of thought and expression. It is something else for the official opinion of the court to do so. Of course, that opinion's shadowy profundities are often profoundly incoherent. Scalia. The majority is trying to overthrow the government similar to the Nazis in Germany. But what really astounds is this hubris reflected in today's Justice Putsch. The 5 justices who compose today's majority are entirely comfortable with concluding that every state violated the Constitution for all of 135 years between the 14th Amendment's ratification and Massachusetts permitting same-sex marriages in 2003. Thomas. Gay people already had it great. Petitioners cannot claim, under the most plausible definition of liberty, that they have been imprisoned or physically restrained by the states from participating in same-sex relationships. To the contrary, they have been able to cohabitate, raise children in peace. They have been able to hold civil marriage ceremonies in states that recognize same-sex marriage, in private religious ceremonies in all states. They have been able to travel freely around the country, making their homes wherever they please. Far from being incarcerated or physically restrained, petitioners have been left alone in order their lives as they see fit. Thomas. We have set up a war between religion and government. In our society, marriage is not simply a governmental institution, it is a religious institution as well. Today's decision might change the former, but it cannot change the latter. It appears all but inevitable that the two will come into conflict, particularly as individuals and churches are confronted with demands to participate in endorsing civil marriages between same-sex couples. Thomas. The majority probably destroyed religious liberty. Although our Constitution provides some protection against such governmental restrictions on religious practices, the people have long elected to afford broader protections than this court's constitutional precedents mandated. Had the majority allowed the definition of marriage to be left to a political process, as the Constitution requires, the people could have considered the religious liberty implications of deviating from traditional definition as part of their deliberative process. Instead, the majority's decision shortcuts that process with potentially ruinous consequences for religious liberty. Thomas. Gay people are fine without government recognition, just like slaves. The corollary of that principle is that human dignity cannot be taken away by the government. Slaves did not lose their dignity any more than they lost their humanity. The premise supporting this concept of marriage are so fundamental that they rarely require articulation. The human race must procreate to survive. Procreation occurs only through sexual relationships between a man and a woman. When sexual relationships result in conception of a child, that child's prospects are generally better if the mother and father stay together rather than going their separate ways. Therefore, of the good of the children of society, sexual relationships that can lead to procreation should occur only between a man and a woman, committed to a lasting bond. Society has recognized that bond as marriage, and by bestowing a respected status and material benefits on married couples, society encourages men and women to conduct sexual relationships within marriage rather than without. As one prominent scholar put it, marriage is a socially arranged solution for a problem of getting people to stay together and care for children that the mere desire for children and the sex that makes children possible does not solve. Roberts. The dictionary says so. In his first American dictionary, Noah Webster defined marriage as a legal union of a man and a woman for life, which serve the purposes of preventing the promiscuous intercourse of the sexes, promoting domestic felicity, and securing the maintenance and education of children. Roberts. It sure seems like the leads to legal polygamy. I don't mean to equate marriage between same-sex couples with plural marriage in all aspects. There may well be relevant differences that couple different legal analysis. But if there are, petitioners have not pointed to any. When asked about a plural marriage union at oral argument, petitioners assert that the state doesn't have such an institution. But that's exactly the point. The states at issue here do not have an institution of same-sex marriage. Either. Roberts. The opinion isn't very nice to opponents of same-sex marriage. Perhaps the most discouraging aspect of today's decision is to the extent in which a majority feels compelled to sully those on the other side of the debate. The majority offers a cursory acceptance that does not intend to disparage people who, as a matter of conscience, can't accept same-sex marriage. But the majority's account, Americans who did nothing more than follow the understanding of marriage that has existed for our entire history, in particular the tens of millions of people who voted to reaffirm the state's enduring definition of marriage, have acted to lock out, disparage, disrespect, and subordinate, and inflict indignity wounds upon their gay and lesbian neighbors. These apparent assaults of character of fair-minded people will affect its society and the court. Roberts, have your fun, but you just soiled the Constitution. If you are among the many Americans of whatever sexual orientation who favor expanding same-sex marriage, by all means celebrate today's decision. Celebrate the achievement of a desired goal. Celebrate the opportunity for new expression of commitment to a partner. Celebrate the availability of new benefits, but do not celebrate the Constitution. It had nothing to do with it. Scalia. We just destroyed democracy. A system of government that makes the people subordinate to a committee of 9 unelected lawyers does not deserve to call itself a democracy. The striking, unrepresented character of the body voting on today's social upheaval would be irrelevant if they were functioning as judges, answering the legal question whether the American people had ever ratified a constitution provision that was understood to proscribe the traditional definitions of marriage. But of course, the justices in today's majority are not, because the government allowed them to be enslaved. Those held in internment camps did not lose their dignity because the government confined them. And those denied government benefits certainly did not lose their dignity because the government denied them benefits. The government cannot bestow dignity, and it cannot take it away. Alito. Opponents of marriage equally will be vilified. It will be used to vilify Americans who are unwilling to assert with the new orthodoxy. In the course of its opinion, the majority compares traditional marriage laws to laws that defined equal treatment for African Americans and women. The implications of this analogy will be exploited by those who are determined to stand out every vestige of dissent. I assume that those who cling to old beliefs will be able to whisper their thoughts in the recesses of their homes. But if they repeat those views in public, they will risk being labeled as bigots and treated as such by governments, employers, and schools. By imposing its own views on the entire country, the majority facilitates and marginalizes one of the many Americans who have traditional ideas. Recalling the harsh treatment of gays and lesbians in the past, some may think that turnabout is fair play. But if that sentiment prevails, the nation will experience bitter and lasting wounds. I'm going to do what I wanted to do at the beginning of this audio, is to show That's the view that's nice from where I stand. I wanted to show this at the beginning, but I risked disrupting my settled and focused, pointed laptop. So at computer level, unfortunately, trash can is the center, is the focal point. This has been Tom Doody, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Doody in a Google search for my site. Thank you for listening. Have a good day, good evening, or restful night's sleep. Ciao.